This book, they say that the characteristics of the suffering of the karmic forces is instance. This can be interpreted in two ways. For example, first of all, everything disperses in a void manner and everything changes. And also, everything has the same characteristics that each moment, instantly, they disperse. So there's nothing that is being concrete when it's changing. Although it seems like it is concrete, there's nothing that is fixed. So it's the same, even the country, and also Earth, the whole world. Although it seems like everything is fixed, but everything, even to a small dust particle, there is nothing that is concrete. Everything goes through change, and through the change, they don't disappear instantly, but the form stays the same, and in the form, they change and they keep changing for something else. Something new is born, and so change is also, in a way, a formula for a new beginning. But why do people feel the suffering? You wish that everything doesn't change and everything stays the same, but we feel the suffering because everything changes. And there's nothing in this world that doesn't change and that stays the same. In what form ever, whatsoever it is, they go through change. Even this disease, through the process of change, if a condition is given for it to have a change in a way of sickness, then it causes a disease. We can look at our life in this way, in this manner. Secondly, in the void phenomenon, there is no characteristics that is independent. So while we go through change, although there are beings that doesn't change, for example, although my body form has changed, there's something inside of me that doesn't change, and if I stay the same and if it continues in my next life, it'll be profitable. But there's nothing like that. There's nothing that doesn't change in this world. Then if you ask, what is Arayashik? Itself is also, even our DNA is also not concrete, and also our spiritual form is also going through change. If your DNA doesn't change, then you cannot have baby. Since the DNA also changes, you have taken the DNA from your parents and you are being born. If you look at the history of your mankind, even through DNA, you can look at the traces. So in our body, there is nothing in our body that you can call eternal, whether it's Atman or... And if you expect it to stay the same and duplicate it again in your next life, then there's no reason for us to have to worry. But our life doesn't get duplicated in that way, and even the DNA, our biological DNA, does not get duplicated in that manner. Even if it's the same couple, and even if they have a baby, and even the baby in the stomach, different different babies are born from the different stomach. If you say the same conditions are given, then the baby should also have the same conditions. But depending on the condition given at the time of the birth, the babies also have the different characteristics. So what is a property of the suffering of the karmic forces? Although we have the thought that everything, your aspiration for everything to remain still, but everything changes, and in the middle of the change, there is nothing in this world that is fixed or concrete. That's why we have the suffering. If you look at people who speak about the theory of evolution after Darwin, when they did the mental analysis for the evolution, they say, basically, why do men or other living things try to bear a baby? There might be some people who think that I'm not trying to have a baby, but if you ask what caused the natural instinct, they said it is because the sense of I, we realize ourselves that our beings are not eternal, so they are trying to pass at least 50% of your DNA to some other beings. So when you have a baby, they're very happy at the fact that they look similar. Just even if you're very ugly, you feel great happiness if someone says your child looks like you. But what is that? This under the notion that we cannot find the being that exists. So when we say you are becoming a monk, that means you're not going to have the greediness of those biological arena. That's the notion that's behind becoming a monk. Depending on other reason and cause, other reason and condition, you exist. So there is no being in this world that is independent. Whether it's the God or even Buddha. Those who doesn't know, they might say that he has absolute value, but there is nothing absolute. He's very faithful to the subjective value. Buddha has never accepted the absolute value, but everything is subjective. In olden times, water, fire, wind, soil, we thought they existed since long time back. So the religion like Jordanian, they thought the fire existed since long time ago. And also personalized Samgasak, they obeyed water. That water is the basis of all beings. And like Hindus, they obeyed sun. Although they say so, with the development of water, they have been able to analyze water until molecular forms, and they realize that it is just merely hydrogen and oxygen. And even oxygen and hydrogen, they change. They are also not absolute beings. So if you divide hydrogen and oxygen, then there is no water. So everything is interdependent on one another, and even family. Even this simple family, the parents come into being and children come into being, and then there is the value of family. But if you ask will the family last forever, the family will not last forever, and the family will also change in 10 to 20 years, and again another family will be born. So there is no being in this world that is absolute. Everything exists due to subjective value. If you say there is value that is independent, then we can also say there's an absolute God and there's also Jesus, and then everyone might become the victims. But because we do not have the absolute value, even this agony is never absolute value, but it is also value that has been inherent. So if you make the condition that there is no agony, then the agony will also disappear. There comes the value of the practice. So those people who believe in God, it's difficult for them to believe in the value of having faith, because they believe in absolute God and absolute value. That's why it's difficult for them to take into the value of the, and that is also a great gap for those who believe in God. That's why if you have the value of the practice, and if you try to reduce your greed, and if you try to reduce your anger, and if you try your best to remove all of them, that is the best way to refrain yourself from fights. Even in family, the worst thing in a negative family, if father is not able to make a proper decision, then the whole family, including wife and children, they become the victims. They become the worst victims. And so even the husband, if the husband realizes that he cannot exist as a father when there is no family and there is no wife, the moment he realizes that, he becomes a happy family. So even happiness. In Hinayana, we say that if you reduce your own agony, it's also acceptable, but there is something that has been said because of inevitable reasons. But if there is a relative reason, or if there is a relative value cost, so even if I'm here and if I promise myself that I'll never see that person, and even your parents, but if you say that your parents died on the street because of some accidents, you have great pain. Why? That's because you cannot exist on your own with absolute value. So even the practice, if you not have a proper understanding of the happiness and also gratefulness for those who helped you to exist into this world, then you can never have the contentment. So even in a family, if your mother or if a mother in the family has been living her life in a very selfish way, then that means that's the end of the family. Yesterday it was on news that after giving birth, 4 days after the birth of the child, she ran away. So they're trying to find her now. That means she's the only one who wants to survive. But even the husband and even the children, everyone has become victims. So in Mahayana, the reason why Mahayana is the greatest religion, and the reason why Mahayana is the greatest Buddhism is because we have the assurance that my happiness or others' happiness will become the basis of my happiness. Without that thought, everyone will become selfish. If you say someone like Isun-shin general, if he live his selfish life, then there would have been end of our world. There's no hypocrisy given now, but maybe we will not have Korean letters anymore, and our country would have belonged to Japan. But the Admiral Isun-shin, he sacrificed everything for the good of Korean people, which number about 80,000. Without that kind of value, how can you make happiness when your family is unhappy, when your neighbor is unhappy, when your country is unhappy? How can you be happy? Even in Japan, if you make your neighbors unhappy, you might become happy. If you believe in those rightists in Japan, like Prime Minister of Japan, if you listen to his speech, it's very pathetic. It's impossible. If you do that, it only results in hurting others. So everything exists depending on other conditions and reasons. Like this, you do not exist even for a moment, and you keep changing, and you exist in this world. Everything changes, and just because everything changes, we feel the great pain. Therefore, looking at all human beings suffering in the flame of suffering, just the way I don't want suffering, you should think that others does not want suffering too. I try myself in order not to be unhappy, and just like that, other beings, they try their best to become happy. So if you keep giving them conditions for them to be unhappy, then that means you cannot become happy on your own, but that will also make everyone unhappy. But in our world, the selfish thought is that you want to be happy, and you believe that making yourself satisfied is the road to happiness. But this thought makes everyone in our society unhappy. I think if in the matters regarding Seoul Ferry, if anyone, just one person, whether it's the Marine Corps or whether people who went to rescue others, I was very surprised when I was watching TV. Those private divers, one of the representatives came and said, if we succeed, the diver who went to rescue, in the beginning he said if he could only succeed in saving one person, but later he said if they succeed in saving one person, it will become a great business profit for them. I was really surprised when he said that. There were corals floating on the water, but he was trying to earn money. it's a little difficult to say how I feel here, but I felt it was like a hyena who was eating corpse. That was so selfish. Amongst them, just if only one person, one of the expert in Japan, he said amongst those time when they were sinking, if they only make an announcement that you should jump into the water and try to survive, then not so many people have died. But so many people, they only try to survive on their own. Even the captain, he said on the mic that it's dangerous here, so do not approach. Then what was he trying to tell? So nowhere on in the issue regarding Sewol Ferry, there is no selflessness anywhere. And if you think that's our present address that we are living right now, then we can also understand that we are living in a very miserable world. There's a saying, if you throw a lump of soil, then dogs will follow the soil, but the tiger will look at the lion will look at the person who threw the stones.
옛날에 약 없을 때 뭐 어디 닭 돌멩이 날아서 이마 닭 깨졌다고 탁 아이고 된장 갖고 와라. 된장 옛날에 약 없을 때 탁하면 된장은 떴다하면 앞으로 그렇게 알아야 되지. 그걸 갖다가 탁 했는데.
You should know everything just by looking at it. Before Venerable Gyeongbong, when he took all his disciples for a walk, and there was a sound, and one of them said, I might be so scared that I might pee on my pants. And he was like, oh, ha ha ha, where have you been? Where has your consciousness been? You understand the moment you listen to it. During the time when your consciousness is coming back, if you were out of consciousness, then even if you hear the sound of a pickle, you do not know what sound that is. You should look at the content that is criticized by speeches, and also you should look at the meaning behind the speeches and also criticism. If you don't understand, then no matter how much time you recite the mantra, you don't understand what it is actually trying to imply. Here, if you have been putting on a flame, and if it's not able to catch a flame, then you should have the proper understanding of the reason, and you have to remove the reason for it not catching the fire, and there become the way to put the fire. So also again, if you look at the suffering of the karmic forces through our samsara, about 80 years in our life, we remain as people and we die. You feel like you are moving remaining in this human world, you're born to your mother, and then you went to your grandmother, and people bring you up, and also you went abroad to study, you went to university, you got married, and your husband goes to America, and after taking all the rounds, it's about time for you to die. So even if you live for 80 years, if you look at it in a broader spectrum, then there is no time that you have maintained or remained in the same spot. All the time you move from place to place, and one day you really die, and because of your way of living this life, you might be born into an animal, and after 13 years of life, you might die again, and you might meet a wrong owner who had beauty parlor in the previous life, and so you dye your dog's hair so many times, and also you wear very warm clothes even in summer. When I look at dogs, it's very hot, but they are still wearing clothes, and also you have become so fat because you have been fat too much, and you don't want to walk, but you have to walk, and you have to do exercise. And also, in order to pay the debts for your previous life, you are hitting so many times, and even after all the beatings, you have to wag your tail. And so even after 13 years of life, you die and you are reborn again. It's so much headache. If you're born as a human, if you don't do many good things in this life, those people who have been evil to others, and if you're born in the next life, then again, it's everyone comes to you in order to have your debts paid. Even if you meet them as a child, then your children will take all the money, and even your parents and even husband. If you meet enemy in your previous life, then think about it. Why would your husband drink every day? If he's not your enemy, then why would he drink so much? It's burdensome for a husband too, but it's also burdensome for the wife. It is not something like, I will leave, you die, but in order to get paid in your previous life, it's almost like you die and I will die too. And you live on life. Should I get divorced or not? And looking at our children, I cannot even get divorced. And you try to bear everything, and you feel depressed, and you go to a mental hospital. You too, you don't do that, right? Do you fight sometimes? Let me hear directly. Do you fight sometimes? Don't fight even sometimes. Just think of it as it is. Both of you, same. It must be burdensome for you to live with a person like me. If you think of it that way, then it might be easier for you. So, you should have some pity when you're looking at the other person. If you sit and think about yourself. You should understand, or you should think that it must be difficult for your husband in order to live with a person like you. It's not like you are very pretty, and it's not like you are very rich, and also it's not like you're great in any way. But it should be difficult for you to live with a person like me. And also, you should think of your husband or your wife as someone or partner who walks through the road to samsara together. If you have too much expectation, the opponent doesn't have the ability to fulfill your expectations. So it's the other way. Just like if your husband asks you to bring $1 million, you don't have the ability to bring it, right? If I make a joke, then they say if your wife dies in a moderate way, then you get angry. If she wanted to die, then she could have died earlier, or she could have lived for a long time. She died in a way that is not very comfortable. If she dies when she's old, if she dies old, but before the husband's death, they usually say that you could have given me some food before you died. They say it as a joke. There's nothing grateful about it. So you should have pity. What is the way to remove them from suffering, my beloved mankind? What can you do in order to make them remove themselves from suffering? Think of it this way and try to make all the suffering of other mankind as yours. First time when I went to Dalai Lama, he said, my study for Bodhisattva is only this much, a little bit, but last time when I went, he said it's quite. If your children are sick, then as a mother, you're heartbroken. What could you do in order to free them from their disease? You think so, right? But if your daughter-in-law is sick, you just give them money to take medicine. But when all other beings are suffering, just as if your children are sick, just as if you are looking at your children in the middle of the night, just like that, when the mankind has suffering when they're living, the sense of pity should arise, and you should think that, oh, there isn't much that you can do. Your methods are too weak. So you should have the great virtue. So even when you donate or when you make a contribution, I don't think it's possible even the next life. If you invest in stock, that's great. You should invest in something that can give you great fortune. But even the donation, when you give a dollar donation, there are times when it becomes $1 million. It's just like a cone. When you flake it, then it becomes bigger. But it seems like we didn't make such a contribution in our previous lives. So nowadays, I think maybe when you donate, you could donate in places where the virtue will be greater. There are some people who has great luck, great fortune, like someone like Jung Mong-jun. Even in India, they ask him if he could visit India, and they are like, if you could build a factory in India. Why would everyone ask him for this? Why would everyone love him? They're loving him and they're respecting him for his luck. And if you have that kind of virtue, then you will have the luck. You will have the virtue to save many different beings. But it seems like didn't live my life in that way. If there was something delicious, I just ate. And I think I just thought, what should I do about those hungry people? I think I only thought about people who suffer until that much. Whether you're sleeping or awake, how can I help those who suffer? How can I remove them from their suffering? So, someone like Dalai Lama, we should have those kind of thought. When Dalai Lama speaks, because his wish or aspiration is so great, even those who felt difficulty, those who just go and see his face, they also get power or ability to overcome their difficulty. He's such a great person. Even when you're doing any kind of action, you have to do it for the good of all mankind. Whatever prayer that you're doing, even when you're praying, I told them to have a wish in the end, but they were like, oh, my first son is sick, I hope he's not sick, please do not do that, please do not make it too personal. So without the thought that you are trying to save others from their own suffering, this will just become a prayer that which will not have the sense of Buddha. Even if you listen to many things and even if you remember many things, basically, if you do not have the aspiration to save all mankind from suffering, then the prayer does not have so much meaning. This will just become like a function. If the thought that you are trying to save others from suffering, if it's not the basis of your prayer, then no matter what prayer that you make, it will not be very helpful. So no matter how many times you go to temples, it doesn't have so much meaning too. Therefore, as explained previously, you should pray or you should practice looking at everyone who is suffering. So everyone who has their relationship with you, they're going through suffering. It's the same even if they have money. And it's also the same even if they don't have money. And even if they become old and they become weak, it's the same. Through their different through their different choices they made, if you look at their sufferings, it's the same. You feel pity for them. But there is also a situation where it's inevitable. In the above paragraph, the author talks about the method to invent compassion. Compassion is a sense that you expect everyone to be free from suffering and also the cause of their suffering. If you hope that everyone is able to make a condition where they'll be free from all the suffering, we call that compassion. In order to practice a compassionate heart, you should have an official time for the prayer and also practice, and you should do it every day. So when you pray, it means you're praying that you are repenting all the bad things that you have done so far. That should be the prayer. But you should not pray for earning more money, for a longer life, and being a happier life. That has got nothing to do with compassion. Even if you read the Thousand Eyes and Hands Sutra, everything is about compassion and how to live a proper life. Other than that, is there anything special about the sutra? They talk about the 10 wishes of Avalokitesvara and what are the ways to repent, and also pay attention to your heart, and what are the ways to remove the agony of your heart. Even the 1,000 hands and 1,000 Eyes and Hands Sutra is about compassion. Everything is about that. And while you are praying that, you should not have other thoughts. You should try to have better understanding of the sutra, and you should try your best to change your heart. It's very important that you keep praying in that way. You have to try your best to arise the compassionate heart when you're praying. And also, even when you are sitting or when you're lying down, you have to practice the same way. So even when you're praying, you should have the heart of praying. And also, but when you're acting, when you're taking an action, normally you should also think that everything is your previous life's karma, and what are the ways to help the other person. Having this thought is the beginning of all practice, and the completion through this method is the end of all practice. If you are able to pursue one method of practice, then even after completion of the practice, you can maintain the good experience. And this state will help you to develop and also expand your compassion. So this kind of motivation should come once in a while. So even if your heart doesn't change 180 degrees, it should be changed like 10 to 20 times. So if it doesn't change, then everything will be back to where it was. If even after listening, if everything is the same, then and if everything goes back to where it stood, then it's very difficult. When we say that person is persistent, it doesn't mean anything else, but the question is how much strength does a person has to change his or her heart when listening to this kind of teachings. On the other hand, after the end of the practice, if you're not able to maintain the heart, then your heart will again wander around, and your teaching will become slow down. Your teaching will slow down furthermore. Oh, is there a phone call on my mobile? Today at 12 I have a meeting. If you do this kind of act, then everything is going back to where it stood in the first place. When you're praying, you should come here and do how you have been doing so far. Just pay your whole attention. But it seems like you have meeting, and when it's around 12, so when it's about 11:50, then you pick up your bag. It doesn't help you with your study. It's just like a pigeon which is sitting in a bean farm. And those people, when you look at them, you can look at them from your eyes. Even their eyes, they lose their spirituality, and it's just a corpse sitting there. You wanted to go, but your heart to go has disappeared. Should I go or not? Why do you talk about it today? Today I have a meeting. Even when you're praying, you should not do that. You should not just pray for a short time and want to go home. When you are reciting Avalokitesvara, stop thinking that you want to do until 12:30 and go to make kimchi. If you do that way, then that's just full of disturbance. Even when you come to study, when you come here, you should cancel all your schedules and just concentrate in studying. I don't know if you remember, but there are just two ways or two reasons which I will allow you not to come to the teaching. What were they? The first one is you have died, or the second reason is you have had operation, so you're under anesthesia. If you have some great family gathering, you don't have to do a lot of things like what we used to do in olden times. And also nowadays, I heard that a lot of people, they just buy. I heard. One of the youngsters called me and said, Venerable Jinok, I'm going to make some offerings to my ancestors. But I don't know how to cook.
지금 카메라 앞으로 가지 말라는 소리를 못 알아들었어. 일어나서 이 카메라 밑에 숙이고 가. 바짝 숙이고 가. 옳지. So while preparing for the offering,
She asked, can't we just have the offering as how we want? Can't we just do it with pizza?
피자 올려놓고 지내면 안 될까요?
That's your thought, but if you think or if you're hoping for your grandparents, maybe having pizza which they never ate before could be a good idea. But if you just put some pizza which she doesn't usually eat, she might have diarrhea. So think about it just like the way that she's alive. Maybe she'll ask for kimchi after eating pizza. But whatsoever reason it is, while studying, you should not have the thought of disturbance. You should not change your place from time to time. You should not change your time. And also, you should not do it one day and stop it the other day. If you have started, then you should continue it until the end. Then only your heart will start changing, even to a small extent. We are asking you to practice in order to change your heart. We don't have any other implications behind it. These are the burdens of practice. So even when you're practicing, it's very important that you should look after yourself. So even when you're living every day, if your heart is changing in a selfish way, you should always check if your heart is going in the proper way, if you're listening to Buddha's teaching, and if your heart is changing the right way. You should always experiment on you, and you should always have a proper attention. It is helpful in order to maintain the same status even after practice. And this is the way to enjoy the proper and also good flow of it. So when you wake up in the morning, you pray, and if you're sitting down for prayer and have the heart that maybe you will try to be less selfish today. And if you try to read the way to Bodhisattva even a little, then maybe you will see the burden, or maybe you will see your heart, that your heart has been trying to change all this while. If you don't do that, then practice never comes. This is the way to enjoy the proper and also good flow of your heart. Not saying that there is a change or there is distinction between all relatives and all your family. You should continue your practice. So in order to arise the sense of compassion, I hope all the mothers in Korea should practice this. If we say it's your child, then they almost lose their consciousness because they pay so much attention. But when it's child of someone else, then they do not think of it the same way that they do for their child. I know it's difficult, but just as much as they have attention on their child, if they could have attention on someone else's child, just like 1/100%, it would be grateful. From the moment you open your mouth, please don't come and tell me, oh, my son is, my daughter is. That's very foolish. There is nothing much to it whether your children is very intelligent or clever. When I saw it in kindergarten, everyone thinks their child is genius. My kid knows how to speak, but I'm not able to understand what the child was trying to say. My child can run around a lot without falling down. Kids, some of them have very good athletes, but on the other hand, they might be slower in speeches, and there are some kids who might be faster in the speeches but also slower in body action. And that's why, if you say my child is a genius, honestly, I don't think there are so many geniuses in this world. some people go this way and some people go the other way. So I told the researchers, I told them to make a tradition. Since this child is able to speak well, so he's a doctor of speech. So I told them to make a distinction of their good characteristics. If you do that, you'll be able to understand. But for the parents, it's just your child who are the genius. So even when you have a recitation in an ear, I feel very uncomfortable sitting there. When their child is coming on the stage and trying to perform, even the grandmothers, they come on stage to take pictures. And when their child goes away, then just like the water flows in the ocean, they just move. Everyone moves away from the stage. Don't do that. It's also not helpful to the child because you repeat that so many times. Every year I go up to the mountain and I watch the pine tree and I watch the seeds flying. And when I do that, I told you this many times, but I will tell you once again. If you look at it, there is a wing. It looks like a wing on one side, and this has a little weight. And this is stuck inside the cone, and if they feel they have to fly the seed today, then they will expand. They open their mouths, and that's the time when it is sunny. When it is sunny, that means the wing is dry and it can fly. And it is also day when it is windy. So when it's windy and when it's sunny, it opens and it flies. I wanted to buy a camera and take a picture of it. And when the wind blows, that's about the time, between 12 to 2. Even the time, they are aware of it. But the pine trees, they never have the wing around. They never have the cone around this area, but they always have it in the end. And those which are in the bottom part of the tree, they all fall and they die. So they always have it. They always have it on the very top of the trees. And when the wind blows, and when the tree is shaken, once it falls down, and it takes a round, and when it flies just like a helicopter, it flows down to the mountain. When it flows from the top of the mountain on a windy day, sometimes it flies up to 200 to 300 meters. I think the pine tree, just like the mothers in Korea, they have huge attachment and they are also full of love, and so they have it just like in the bottom of their tree, and it fell on the ground. What do you think? Do you think can they survive? They will die because they are shadowed by the mother. We are doing the same thing here. You should let them become a seed and fly away, fly far. When it flies far, you have to make it fly as far as you can. That's why when you're trying to send your children abroad in order to study, and when you try to send them for a trip, those who have broader experience finally they will succeed. But if they have been living with your parents or living with the parents for all the time, and if it's been you all the time, then even after they get married, they have argument with your husbands, they will call you and say, "Mother, I had fight." When you get married, you should not call your parents again because it's gone, done. What time do you have your meeting? 12:30? Is it 12:30? At 12? Where are you meeting them? Which restaurant? Don't go too fast. I knew it from the beginning that she would leave. Normally she sits here in the front, but she's sitting at the back and her hips is not even touching the floor. I knew it when she was sitting down. This flies far. You know, when you first don't look after the farm after planting seeds, what happens? It becomes the farm of weed, right? And I told you, you know, after the weeds, the pokeweed, they take over because they are stronger than the weed. And after that, the mugwort will take over. And after the mugwort, the pine trees will take over the place because of the just flying. But after 40 to 5 years, they will also disappear. Why is that so? Because oak trees will take over because oak trees are stronger. Even back of our temple, even back of our monastery, they also have a lot of oak trees. And now, how do you take care of the oak tree? No, in the chestnuts, normally skewers take about like so many chestnuts in their cheek, and those which are delicious. You know, when the skewers first take the chestnuts, they normally have like 2 wives. That's from the fairy tale. But when they eat, they usually give the less delicious one to their wives, and they eat the better ones. And they hide the better ones in a place that's far away, and they only give the delicious ones to their wives. And they eat everything in winter, those less delicious ones. But those the ones which are delicious, they hide it and they forget, just like the way that we plant, just like the way we forget our bribe money. And from here the acorns tree will again burn. And later they'll be born into a thick tree. But actually, first when the pine trees fly over, when the cones fly over and take over, when you first look at it, if you just keep them for 5 to 6 years, they grow much taller than me. And they expand themselves in that way. But nowadays, people have too much attachment, and they try to keep them together with them. And in that case, the parents should try to help the kids to live their own life by trying to keep them far. But parents, they should only help the kids when they have difficulty living on their own. If you put too much attachment or if you put too much attention to them, then you're not helping them. Even cleaning, when they're about 7 to 8 years, you can clean the house, but you have to teach the kids to clean their house on their own. If you don't do that, then forever they will not know how to clean the place. That should be the way of our life. But since your attachment to the kid is too strong, and since you have no interest in others except your child, the sense of equanimity is not maintained. If you only think about your child, especially since you only think about the child that you have, now we have so much issue about children who are beaten and who have been troubled by their kids. Everything began from attachment, and everything began from your selfishness, that you only take care of your child. If you are not able to maintain the sense of equanimity, then you cannot practice. You cannot practice Buddhism at all. Therefore, you should always try your best to maintain the sense of equanimity. You should try your best. Then only your heart will change and your heart will evolve. To them, if you have the same sense of equanimity and if you have the same sense of compassion to them, if you have the same sense of compassion, just like the way you have compassion for your relatives, that means you are practicing your Buddhist beliefs for every mankind in this world. It's very important to have the sense of equanimity, even to animals like dogs. Being a human, it's important to be a human because you can have the sense, you can have the selfless sense. But here we are not talking about the importance of human in terms of selfishness. When you're practicing for the compassion, just like the way that you have tried to develop the sense of equanimity, if you can concentrate on a person who is going through suffering, it will be very effective. If you are not able to do it for all the mankind, then in reality, other than myself or other than my relatives, if you are able to do it to a person who gives us so much suffering, if you try to do it, although if there's a kid who goes through so much suffering, and if you try to give them as much as you do for your child, then although it might seem too easy, you will face difficulty from time to time, and there will be moments when you have difficulty concentrating on the kids, and you also have the sense of discrimination against your child. Once someone told me, when I asked them to volunteer well,
자원봉사를 열심히 하십시오.
they said, after 3 months, I'm not able to do it.
자원봉사를 한 3개월 해보니까 못하겠어요.
While doing the voluntary work, there are things I don't do to my parents, but why do I have to do it? I feel really bad about it.
왜 해줘야 되는지 회의가 와서 못하겠어. 진짜 회의 같은 소리.
Since you are not able to do it to your parents, you should do it better. You should have the sense of equanimity. And if you have the repentance or the sense that you are not able to do it for your parents, then you should try to do it just like the sense of your skepticism at the time. While buying clothes for your child, if you know that the child is going through difficulty, maybe like act of buying the same clothes for the child, while giving delicious food to my child, give something delicious to that child too. It's just like you're expanding your herd. If you don't do that, then no matter how much time or how much you try to claim that you are practicing Buddhist beliefs, your practice doesn't work out. You already have a small eyes. Even if you try to close it, it's not helping out. So the sense of compassion and without the practice of the sense of equal compassion, you cannot achieve agony, the removal of agony. If you think about it in an opposite way, liking the child of your birth, that's something that even adults can do. It's not something great about it. But there are also some parents, even after they have given birth to the child, they are not able to bring up the child and they throw the child away. That's even worse than a dog. I can't. So if it doesn't work out for one person, you should have the sense of equanimity even to one child. If you study on one child, then it's easy to study on 2 children. It becomes way easier. For example, let's think about it this way. In Suncheon prison, there are about 1,200 people. Everyone have committed crime and they are wearing handcuffs. If they were my parents or my relatives, what kind of thought do you have to have? In the beginning stage, you can specially observe the sufferings of the beings born in the evil realms. When you say evil realms, it refers to those who are born in the evil realms. In the beginning, someone told me, "Oh, I'm even worse than a bird. I cannot fly away like a bird." But what does it mean? Every day the bird is scared that it might be eaten by some hawk or some eagle. In such kind of fear they live, but Nowadays, the matters about the pets. I hope they stop doing the act that buying a new pet when they wish to, and then throw away when they don't feel like. Goes the same for the dogs and also for the tortoise. Or last time I saw on TV, and I saw some dogs being brought up there. And after being fed by one of the neighbor, he just comes out to the street and keeps looking at it. And the dog was always waiting for the owner. And I don't think there's any difference between the pet and human. He was relying on human. I don't know for what goodness the owner had thrown away the dog, but the dog was chasing after the car when the cars went. It seems like they were driving and left the dog on the street and drove away. And for months, the dog had been waiting on the street. If you leave a dog on the street just like that, you're actually wanting the dog to die. How can you do that in these three different evil pastor winds? If you imagine that the dog was your mother, you can never do that. You can especially observe the sufferings of the beings born in the above realms, and also if you have a purpose, and if there's action, and also you can practice compassion for those who prefer negative behaviors with consequence. When I went down to Jungang High School, it was red light, but few of them strode away. It's a place where there's a lot of frequent accidents because people speed, and because of the speed, a lot of people they don't obey the traffic light, and it is a very, very common place to have car accidents. And I told them to wait for me, and when the signal changed, I went and scolded them. I told them, when you cross the street on the red light, you're not keeping the promise made between us, and it also doesn't mean that you will not die if you get hit by a car or shot by a gun because of such thoughts. If you cross the street like that, maybe it's fine for 1,000 to 2,000 times, but once by chance, there's a chance that you might die, and if you don't die, there's also a chance that you might have physically this challenge. One of them looked very nice. She looked very, very good, and she said, "I'm very sorry." And I told her, "Yeah, you shouldn't be sorry to me, but you should be sorry for your body. It's almost like you're trying to break off your body." And another one, she apologized, saying that I was so busy, so I couldn't see the traffic light. And I told her, you should still obey the traffic light even if you were very busy. But one of them was just, I could see the anger. One bald old man came, and I wondered what he's talking to me. What's your business if I die or not? When I see someone like her, then you can see that she's blocked from front and even to the back. It's very nice if she changes her mind soon, but if she stays the same even in her 40s and 50s, then there's a chance that she might meet her death because of her hurts like that. The cause and the relation law of human, they never come just because you wish for it, and they come even if you do not wish for it. One of them was quite fun. She was giving me a lot of excuse, and she said a lot of people cross even in the red light. And I told her a lot of people they come to funeral dead. If I go there, well, you also going to come there as a dead corpse. And it seemed like she was stuck. And I told her, it's for your life. You don't do that for other people's lives. It shouldn't be done so that you follow others. But still, if others do it, of course I know that, but what you're saying is wrong. But she apologized that what she was saying is wrong. And I told her if she knows that she's wrong, then it's fine. And when I was coming from the Munsu nursing home, behind Emart, maybe about high school second grade, was knocking on the street, and I called him, and a lot of others are passing by in cars, and why are you smoking here? And he said, I'm of the age to smoke, and I asked for his ID card, and he got scared. And I told him, if I give you more, then you look like the third grade in high school. You could see that he was young. And I told him, which school are you? I'm going to take you to your principal. And he said his story now. I told him there are manners even in smoking. In front of others, you should at least try not to smoke. And just because you have freedom doesn't mean you are all free. But the reason why I told him so, is because if you ignore the red light all the time and just pass by, one day you might have difficulty, you might face great problem because of that. One of the taxi driver, he was cursing the other taxi driver because we stopped at the red light, but the other taxi driver who was behind us, he sped away, and he said, even if you run like that, you don't even earn a lot of money. And one day, if you meet, even if you pass 1,000 times, and if you fail once, then that time you're going to lose all that money, and you're also going to face a lot of problems. And I told him, you're correct. And I told him that if people have a lot of thoughts like you, then I also asked him, how many years have you driven taxi? And he said 20 years. He had about 2 times car accidents, and that was only because people scratched his car. So if you think like that, then even when you're doing bad deeds, there's a chance that bad consequences will arise from whatever action that you have done. And in case like that, you should have the sense of compassion. You should have affection, and that's also called compassion. But for us, we have a very strong attachment. And so if my child doesn't get affected, if my child doesn't get harmed, then it's all fine. But there's no means like that. There's someone who has to go at 12:30, right? Even if they don't face difficulty at this moment, but they're accumulating the suffering that they're going to suffer in future. That's why you have to tell them. This is what I usually tell to those who smoke and who drinks a lot. If you do this, it's not good for you. And no matter how much I tell them,
그렇게 얘기를
they don't listen well.
잘 안 들어. 그래가지고 왜냐면 10년, 20년 뒤에 그로 인해서
And there's a high chance that your life will get miserable after your death.
가능성이 굉장히 많잖아요.
I warn them a lot of times, but they don't really listen.
잘안 들어.
If you practice the above phrases well, then it will be very helpful to you to grow sense of compassion for all beings in samsara. So even if you see just a dog, you should not just look at the dog in a loving way, but
사랑스럽다 그렇게 보지 말고요. 저 강아지라는 중생도 업을 잘못하고
but due to his or her mistakes, the dog got its form as a dog. So you should wish for the dog to be free from its body form soon.
그다음에
And as a dog, the dog should be going through very fearful and very unstable condition. I realized this when I was bringing up Sunjae.
그 전에 뭐라 그러냐면
A lot of people say dogs and cats, when they're about to die, they go look for places to die. But I think that's a lie. They're same as human.
이제 사람하고 똑같아.
When they get old, and if they go out to the wild, then they get eaten in the wild. So because of that, they go under the rock or they go into the cave, and they are not even able to eat, and they just die. Imagine how afraid they would be. It's not like some scholars who have attained certain stage and they just go and die. But even our Sanjay, even our dog, I could see how difficult time the dog was going through, and the dog also had dementia. And so when we both meet and give a little water, the dog also has some power. But because people protect him and take care of him, he lived for a few more months. And there are a lot of parts we misunderstand. Just because they're animals, they go find places for them to die. They know when they're going to die and they do that, but they're weak, and they know that even in order to live for a little long time, they try their best not to be eaten. Imagine how fearful it is, because they eat when you're alive. So in order not to be eaten, they go under the rock or into the cave, and they suffer a lot and they die. If you're not able to observe the suffering of animals, then you just imagine that it's obvious for animals to go into hiding and they die. It's just because they are in a condition that they cannot bear it. But because those dogs are dear human, we do take a little more care of them. But when you're about to die, a lot of people, even their children or even their daughters and sons, they don't take care of them. So those animals, those people, when you go up into the mountain for hiking, please not yell. If you yell, and if you enjoy the echoes made from the mountain, then animals might be scared, and by accident, if you make a fire in the mountain, then a lot of animals, they die, even snakes. Especially when you make a fire in the mountain, then that's a great scene. It's like a mass killing. It becomes like a hell. And so when you see a fire in the mountain, do not just think that there's a fire in the mountain. You should think that there's so many beings which are dying. if you don't think about it that way, then think about it.
그런 생각을 우리가 안 해준다 그러면
I know you're hungry. Let's do 7 minutes, 7 minutes more. I'm a little hungry, but let's do 7 minutes more.
배고파. 그래서 7분만 더 해.
Most of them, they have misunderstood about your existence, the real being of your existence in a self-centered way, and because of such ignorance, they are being led by ignorance. Because we think about everything in a human-centered way,
사람 중심으로만 생각하고 우리 중심으로
and also in a self-centered way, even the roads that we made.
도로를 닦아놓은 것도 전부 다
There are more than 600,000
그
species
같이 살아가고 있거든.
living in this world, and
60만 종의
And think about it, how selfish are the humans.
먹은 존재냐면 지만 살고 있는.
Even when we built a road,
도로를 닦아놔도 거기에 도로에 언제 우리가 뱀한테 교통신호
was there any time that you taught how to obey the traffic light to snakes? Have you ever paid for the land usage or rent to the rabbits for using the land? They do not know about vehicles. Because vehicles are just an equipment or machinery that we made about 100 years ago, and so they're not able to understand it. Even when they fight with cows, and even if when they hit cows, they don't die. But when they hit vehicles or cars, they die on the spot. Under your will, there's so many animals which were killed. It's like a mass killing. We only think about ourselves. This is too much. There are too many animals which are on the verge of death. There's a bird which exists before. It's almost on the verge of extinction. You don't see this bird anymore. They were killed, most of them. So those compassion do not restrict them to humans. And only Buddhism, even Taoism and Confucianism is same, but only Buddhism, in Confucianism, they only concentrate on human, and even Taoism, they do not consider animals as one species, but in Buddhism, we call that beings, and by calling them beings, we refer to all animals too. So even when we have the offerings for the 49th day, we talk about everyone, whether the beings in the hell or the beings in the lower part and beings in the upper part. We talk about everyone, all sentient beings. We are talking about all lives, not only human. And even amongst human, Caucasians, they talk about God, and also Jews, they talk about God, and it's a big thing. So even when you call our human or whiteness, we remove that from our history. We even remove the skin color. When you talk about skin color, we call this color. But there are also skin color of blacks, and there are also skin color of Caucasians. Why is skin color of this concentrated in this regard? It's only human skin.
유독이 사람
What about chicken and the black chicken? What is the color of their skin? The color of their skin is white and also black, so we should not just refer uniformly as skin color.
놓으면 안 되잖아, 그죠?
So if we are not able to remove
우리 중심에
our self-centered thought because of that ego and because of that stubbornness, we cause a lot of suffering to all sentient beings. Once someone told me, nowadays they come from Philippines and Vietnams, and a lot of kids are born in diverse families. And when Americans came, then blacks came. A lot of people got mixed, and because of this, it's not very favorable. I told them to be quiet, and I asked them, "What's your surname?" He said Kim, and I told him, "Your family, your ancestor, was from that kind of diverse family. Your very beginning is the India's Tamil Ayutthaya race. They have skin like copper skin color. So if you look at them, then some of Kim has a little dark skin color. Do you have black color?" From the Ayutthaya country, she was the princess.
아유다고 그저 공주잖아요, 그죠?
She was a Empress Ho.
그 태우란 말이야. 국제제로는 했고.
And even the Shilla royals, they are some Maigar race. So you should not call the race of white. It's all mixed already.
다 섞였어.
Although some might,
그래서 내가 이제 이런 얘기는 뭐 나가면 뭐라 그럴지 몰라도.
from the beginning, from the old time, we are all mixed up. We cannot just say our race is pure Korean. When I look at them in the body form,
보면 내가 체질을 보면
we call them
사상 체질이
태양, 태음, 소양, 소음.
태음, 소양, 소음.
Those from southeast region and also from north. Those from north,
북방에서 온 체질.
most of them are 소음. They have thick body.
소음 체질이 많아요.
And 태음,
몸이 두툼해요.
they came mostly from south.
또 어디서 온 체질들이냐면 남방 쪽.
And even now they have very strong
인자가 많아서
DNA, and so they prefer summer, and they dislike winter, and they try to drink hot water.
지금도 그래.
So even nowadays, we have mixed races, but it's not uniformly or strictly one race.
한 체질로 딱 돼 있질 않아요. 그러니까
So don't look at things in a self-centered way.
자기 중심적으로 이렇게
Always try to view and understand others in other way, and so always try to look at others looking at them. Don't look at others in a self-centered way, but you should always put others first, and that will cause the beginning of your suffering. Let's end.
발생한다 그럽니다.